Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 9th February 2018. Now let us begin. Now from page 1, the first news we would be analyzing is about the political crisis in Bangladesh. Now to understand the current political crisis in Bangladesh and its future impact, there is a need to know a little bit about the history of how it reached this political crisis, and to also understand the importance of Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina. And to understand their importance, we need to begin from 1972. Now Sheikh Mujib Rahman, who was the leader of the Awami League and a liberating figure in the 1971 Liberation War of Bangladesh, became the first Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Now in 1975, there was political unrest in Bangladesh and an emergency was declared, and Sheikh Mujib Rahman became the President of Bangladesh. Now following this, Sheikh Mujib Rahman was assassinated in a military coup, and a martial law was declared in Bangladesh. So in 1977, General Ziaur Rahman became the President of Bangladesh. Now Ziaur Rahman also adopted Islam as the state religion, and thereby changing the secular features of Bangladesh that were formed by Sheikh Mujib Rahman of the Awami League. Now in 1979, the martial law was lifted from Bangladesh, and the Bangladesh National Party of Ziaur Rahman won the election. However, in 1981, General Ziaur Rahman was assassinated in a military coup, and after him, General Ishad got hold of power in Bangladesh. Now hopefully up till here, you have understood about Sheikh Mujib Rahman and about General Ziaur Rahman. And it is important to know their history so you can understand the current context in relation to Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina. Now in the year 1991, Khalida Zia, who was the widow of General Ziaur Rahman, who was also the leader of the Bangladesh National Party, became the Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 1991. While in the year 1996, Sheikh Hasina, who was the daughter of Sheikh Mujib Rahman and a leader of the Awami League, and became the Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 1996. Now hopefully up till here you have understood on how General Ziaur Rahman and the Bangladesh National Party is currently linked to Khalida Zia, and how Sheikh Mujib Rahman and the Awami League is currently linked to Sheikh Hasina, who is the current Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Now from 1990s onward, power in Bangladesh has kept shifting between Khalida Zia and her party and between Sheikh Hasina and the party of Awami League. And why Khalida Zia is in the news is because she has been sentenced to jail for 5 years in a corruption case. And the elections in Bangladesh are due in December of 2018. And since she is the biggest opposition leader in Bangladesh, it has raised a political crisis. And therefore, there would be many consecutive news that you might hear of this political crisis in Bangladesh coming in the newspaper. So hopefully from this explanation, you would be able to understand the context in which it is being sent and why Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina are important figures in Bangladesh. Now another aspect in this is the role of India. Now India has close relations with Sheikh Hasina's party of Awami League, while India has weak relationship with the party of Khalida Zia of Bangladesh National Party. Now there are 4 major reasons for this. The first is, historically, Indian leaders from Indira Gandhi and later on had good relations with the leaders of the Awami League. The second reason is that Sheikh Hasina and her party of Awami League support policies of secularism in Bangladesh. Now this support has to be seen in comparison to the hostility that the policy of secularism faces from the party of Khalida Zia. Now the party of Awami League has had a pro-India tilt, while the party of Khalida Zia has showcased a tilt towards Pakistan. And the fourth and the last reason is that Awami League opposes the Jamaat-e-Islami. Now Jamaat-e-Islami is a right-wing organization which has been argued as spreading religious fundamentalist ideology and is supportive to the party of Khalida Zia. And since India does not want the propagation of religious fundamentalism in Bangladesh, it has supported the Awami League, which has countered the policies of the Jamaat-e-Islami. Now hopefully up till here you have understood that India has friendly relations with the Awami League and weak relations with the party of Khalida Zia. Moreover, you also further understand the main four reasons for India's friendly relations with the party of Awami League. Now, the political crisis in Bangladesh would appear in the newspaper continuously for consecutive days. But hopefully, from this, you have gotten a basic understanding and can understand the context in which this political crisis is evolving. Now, a question was asked in your UPSC mains examination in the year 2007, which had asked for India's response to the political crisis in Bangladesh. Now, with this, we move on to our next article. Now, we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now, what this article talks about is that from 2015 onwards, the number of ceasefire violations between India and Pakistan has increased year on year. So, in 2015, there were roughly 152 violations, while in the year 2016, it increased to 228 violations. While in the year 2017, the number of violations jumped to 860. While in the month of January of 2018, it has seen the highest number of ceasefire violations in a given 1 month since the 2003 Ceasefire Agreement was signed. Now, the 2003 Ceasefire Agreement was an offer made by the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, and India had formally accepted this proposal and said that the Director General of Military Operations, or DGMOs, of both India and Pakistan agreed to observe a ceasefire at the international boundary, LoC, and the actual ground position line in Siachen. Now, the international boundary, line of control, and the advanced ground position line had been covered in a much earlier DNS video. Now, what we'll do is revise this from your UPSC examination perspective. Now, the UPSC syllabus of 2017 Civil Services Examination. Now, border and border management is part of your GS paper 3 under the security section. So let us understand as to what is the LoC and how is it different from the international border between India and Pakistan. Now, if you see this image, there is a black line which divides the Indian Jammu and Kashmir from the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Now, this line is known as the line of control. Now, the length of the India-Pakistan border is of 3323 kilometers or 3323 kilometers. Now, this 3323 kilometers includes the LoC. Now, the line of control is a de facto border. Now, the de facto border means that it is the actual border but is not officially recognized as an international border by India. Now, prior to the Shimla Agreement, this border was known as the ceasefire line, and it was only after the Shimla Agreement was signed that this border came to be known as the line of control. Now, there is one primary difference between the international border between India and Pakistan and the line of control, and this difference can be asked in your prelims examination. Now, the international boundary between India and Pakistan is guarded by the Border Security Force or the BSF, while the line of control is guarded by the Indian Army. Now, hopefully up till here, you have a pictorial understanding of the line of control. You also understand as to why is it called the de facto border, how LoC got its name, and what is the difference between the international boundary between India and Pakistan and the LoC. Now, another aspect that you should understand. Now, from this image, the LoC ends here, and this point is known as NJ9842. Now, the boundary beyond this point delves into the Siachen Glacier. So, let us understand this boundary also. Now, if you see this image, the LoC ends at this point, and this yellow line defines the actual boundary at the Siachen Glacier. And this boundary ends at this point called Indira Col. And this boundary is known as the Advanced Ground Position Line. Now, hopefully, you also have a pictorial understanding of the boundary at the Siachen Glacier, and you also know from where it begins and where it ends. So, hopefully, if a question is asked in your prelims or your mains examination as to the difference between the international boundary between India and Pakistan, the line of control, and the advanced ground position line, you would be able to answer. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now the focus of this article is that there is a need for providing more funds for small-scale research projects. Now the author has focused upon the recent chapter in the economic survey, which was titled Transforming Science and Technology in India. Now it is for the first time that the economic survey has focused through a particular specific chapter on science and technology. Now the main focus of the author is that there is a lack of funds that are provided to research on science and technology, and this funding gets even smaller for small-scale research projects. Now, the Economic Survey has suggested for doubling the research and development expenditure in the field of science and tech. But according to the author, only 0.8% of India's GDP is spent on research, while countries such as China, Israel, Japan, United States spend about 2% of their GDP on research and development. Now, another aspect that the economic survey has raised is that research through the private sector, in terms of funding and focus, is very low, and hence there is a need to increase the private sector participation in research and development in science and technology. Now, the author and the economic survey has said there is a need for increased focus on exploratory research, wherein it means that Indian scientists and Indian institutes who conduct research in science and technology should focus upon innovative research that leads to new discoveries and inventions. Now, the author and the economic survey also encourage investigator driven research. Now, by investigator driven research, it means that individual scientists should be funded wherein they could conduct exploratory research, and research and development in India should not be dependent upon being led by institutions, and Indian science and technology should not be dependent on institutes to conduct small scale research projects. Now, institute driven research takes up a significant portion of the budget, and it goes into mission oriented projects in the areas of nuclear science, space science, defense technology because they are large scale projects. However, according to the author, there should also be an equal focus on small scale research projects, and that is why the author asserts for encouraging investigator driven research. And the fifth point by the author is that universities provide a limited role to promote research in India, and therefore there is a need to provide funding to students, such as through research grants, and this is needed so that much more students become a part of the science and tech research pool of India. Now, the last factor highlighted by the economic survey is the ease of doing science. Now, according to the survey, there should be a matching effort directed at improving ease of doing science in India in terms of the focus that has been given to the ease of doing business in India. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood the 6 points that the author makes with the aid of the economic survey so as to ensure that research and development in science is encouraged, and that one of the drawbacks, and that the author further asserts that funding is one of the main drawbacks for the lack of research and development in India, and how by providing funding to university researchers, having private sector contributions in form of CSR, we can encourage investigator driven research, especially for small scale research projects. Now with this, we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from the editorial page on page 9. Now the government of Karnataka had constituted a committee to design a state flag, and moreover has asked the committee to submit a report on its legal sanctity. Now this article focuses whether Karnataka should have its own flag or whether states in India should have their own flags. Now we would not go into the political or the cultural debate. So what we'll do, we'll understand this from the perspective of polity for your UPSC examination. Now Article 51A of Fundamental Duties says that it is the duty of every citizen of India to respect the national flag. Now the Constitution of India only talks about the national flag, and there is no mention for a state flag. So, had the framers of the Constitution of India envisioned a concept of state flags, it must have found a mention either in the Constituent Assembly debates or in our Constitution. Now, even the state list and the concurrent list under the 7th schedule contains no provision with respect to the state flag. And similarly, the Emblem and Names Act of 1950, Insult to National Honours Act of 1971, or the Flag Code of India 2002, there is no mention on a state flag. But the counter argument for this is that there is no law that forbids a state flag. And within that sense, Emblem and Names Act of 1950, the National Honours Act of 1971, or the Flag Code of India of 2002 contain no provision that forbids a state flag. And in that similar sense, in India, the Army, the Navy, Air Force, paramilitary forces also have separate flags. Now, as you know, this news is in transition, and we have to wait for the committee that has been formed by the Karnataka government as to how it specifies the legal sanctity of having a state flag. And moreover, then we would have to look at the response of the Indian judiciary and also of the Indian Parliament with regards to this. But hopefully you've understood on where the Constitution of India stands on a state flag. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now let us understand why an amendment was made to the NABARD Act of 1981 and understand the features of the new NABARD Amendment Bill of 2017. Now this bill seeks to amend the NABARD Act of 1981. Now the 1981 Act provided for the establishment of NABARD. And NABARD is responsible for providing and regulating facilities such as credit for agriculture and industrial development in rural areas. Now under the 1981 Act, NABARD had a capital of rupees 100 crores and this capital can be further increased to rupees 5,000 crore by the central government in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India. Now apart from this, in the 1981 Act, the central government and the RBI together must hold at least 51% of the share capital of NABARD. Now moreover, the 1981 bill contained the term small scale industry, an industry in the tiny and decentralized sector. Now the question is, why is the 1981 bill being amended? Now the new bill, to improve its ability to give credit to agricultural sector and provide for industrial development in rural areas. Now it is being done wherein the new bill allows the central government to increase the capital to rupees 30,000 crore and to even increase it beyond rupees 30,000 crore in consultation with RBI if the central government deems it necessary. Now this increased capital would allow NABARD to increase its credit facilitation for agriculture and for industrial development in rural areas. Now apart from this, the bill replaces the terms small scale industry and industry in the tiny and decentralized sector with the term MSME or micro, small, medium enterprises. Now the scope of the NABARD Act has been increased to include micro, small and medium enterprises. Now apart from this, the new bill transfers the entire shareholding in NABARD to the central government. Now this has been done to remove the conflict in RBI's role as a banking regulator and also as a shareholder in NABARD. Now hopefully up till here you have understood that the NABARD Amendment Bill of 2017 seeks to amend the NABARD Act of 1981. It is being amended to improve the facilitation of the objectives of NABARD. It is being done by infusing a capital of 30,000 crore which can be increased further. Moreover, it has increased the scope of the NABARD Act to MSMEs and it also removes the conflict of interest of RBI as being a banking regulator but also being a shareholder in NABARD. So if a question is asked on the NABARD Bill of 2017 in terms of its objective and why it was introduced, you would be able to answer. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this article from page 11. Now this article is in a question answer format and what we'll do is to look at each question separately and understand what has been the response of the Russian ambassador. Now according to the ambassador, India-Russian relations are not drifting apart, but the cooperation between both nations has lagged behind. And therefore, according to the ambassador, there should be further cooperation between the younger generations in both Russia and India in contribution towards joint projects and in the improvement of bilateral relations. Since from previous decades, the cooperation between India and Russia has been mainly confined to the defense sector. Now, according to the ambassador, defense cooperation is one of the pillars of the strategic cooperation between India and Russia. And defense cooperation between both nations has actually been increasing. And moreover, according to the ambassador, Russia is the only country that is actually making with India and in India. Now, according to the ambassador, the relations between Pakistan and Russia are minimal in nature. And according to him, it is only limited to anti-terrorism operations and cannot be compared with relations with India. Now, Pakistan and Russia had recently engaged in a military exercise called Druspa. Now, with regards to an India-Russia logistics support agreement, the Russian ambassador has said that there is no need for a formal agreement. Since India and Russia have a 60-year-old history of military exchanges, tri-service drills, military infrastructure construction, and therefore there is no need for formalization of logistics agreement. Now hopefully you have understood the specific answers given by the ambassador of Russia with regards to India-Russia ties, India-Russia defense cooperation, involvement of Pakistan, or towards the India-Russia logistics supports agreement. And this section provides you a brief overview of India-Russia ties. And so if a question is asked whether India and Russia are drifting apart, you would know that it is not that India and Russia are drifting apart from each other. It's that there is a lack of further cooperation between India and Russia. And this lack of cooperation is being assumed as that both countries are drifting apart. Now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Now we move on to the question for today.